if that gets broken, then our fucking channel makes no sense. so we really need to...
Welcome to Bird's Eye View.
We used to have
There's
a bird.
no birds.
Now it's fucking gone.
Every movie has some bad dialogue.
No, that's not true.
There-
That is
there-
not true. There are movies with... Have you ever seen the Tarantino film? There's no bad dialogue in those. Those are fucking incredible.
Some of them are great.
Oh.
Like, I actually found Reservoir Dogs, I think that was the one, to be incredibly painful to watch.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Wow. Do you like his other films, like Inglourious Basterds?
Inglourious Basterds was good when we initially watched it in theaters. I actually tried to sit down the other day, and watch it on Netflix. And not a lot of rewatch value. I mean,
Really? Wow. I could watch
like,
that movie so many times. What about Django? Do you like Django?
That was a great movie.
That's weird. So they're pretty similar. I feel like Django is very similar to Inglourious.
I think Inglourious Basterds, to some extent, relied on wow factor. Like, when Stiglitz comes in, it's like an 80s action movie introduction.
It does, yeah. It does some of that, but it has... some of my all-time favorite dialogue scenes are in Inglourious Basterds. The scene with at the cafe with Christoph Waltz when he's with the French, I forgot her name, Mignot, I believe, or something. And they're at the French cafe, and he's basically just telling her about like the venue for the premiere. And it's just so well done because she knows that that's the guy who had her entire family killed. And it's just so much tension. Like, she's so nervous, and she's so afraid. She's just so anxious, and you can just feel it, like, the whole time he's talking to her. And he's so personable, and it's like, it's an eerie feeling.
I agree, but I also feel like there's scenes in that movie that are just a little bit too drawn out, like, that were basically filler.
Right.
There's some parts of the movie that it just seems like they spent too much time on, or they took too much of a lull between the next more exciting moment. Like,
I mean, the pacing was very different than a normal movie, so I could see why that would throw some people off. It doesn't bother me, but I could see that argument.
But like I said, we watched it together, and when we watched it the first time, I thought it was awesome. I just felt, having sat down and rewatched it years later, albeit too, so I don't remember it as crisply, so it's not like I just watched it yesterday that I'm just sitting there like, oh, I remember that. That's ruined. Like, it was years later, and it just didn't have the wow factor anymore.
Okay, I mean, I guess that's fair. Some of the scenes in Inglourious just really stuck with me. I mean, the farmhouse one at the beginning is another one.
That's an intense scene, but like, after that, it just kind of sucks that really never plays a part in the rest of the movie.
Well, it's important because it shows us who Christoph Waltz's character is. Like,
I
really
agree.
Introduces us. It shows how personable he is, but how evil he is, and it introduces us to the trauma that the French girl suffered.
I mean, I agree, because I mean,
Shoshana is her real name.
Willem Dafoe would say in Boondock Saints, it's symbolism. But, like, especially with that scene, actually, one of the things I didn't like about it is building up to that scene, especially as the Nazis are coming, you get the idea that the farmer, the man who owns the house, you get the feeling like they kind of build up that character, like one of those characters who used to be like a great warrior or something like that, someone of importance who did what he had to do, and then once the deed was done, just kind of walked off into the mist, and like it feels like, oh, well, they're coming for him because he's that guy, and either they need to know that he's in check or that he's walked away from that kind of life, kind of thing. Like, I felt like in that moment that there was a lead up to a potential important character, and then it just kind of, the scene plays out. He, for no reason, just caves instantly.
I wouldn't say no reason. I mean, he gave him an ultimatum. Like, they would tear his house apart, and if they found something, he would end up being tried for war crimes.
Well, that's the thing too. Is supposedly his house has already been searched.
Yeah,
so
but this
you'd think that he would have a little bit more efficient system of like hiding these people if he's already been through a search.
But I believe that Christoph Waltz even says that he had received intel that brought him back to that house because he had narrowed it down to like 4 houses and he had already like searched the other houses. And I think he actually does mention that at the beginning of that scene.
He might have, but I feel like they really built up the Frenchman's character to just let it go nowhere. I mean, on top of the fact that not only do they make him look like he might be the mysterious hero from the past, he's clearly got above average intelligence because he's one of the few people in the movie who's...
And you're talking about the guy who owns the farmhouse.
Yeah, he's clearly versed in 3 languages, German, French, and English.
Yeah.
So they paint somebody who has a slightly mysterious, powerful background, obviously intellectual, and they just kill the family and it's over.
I think that's how Tarantino is, though, because in Tarantino's world, all the characters are people. Like, in most movies, when you're introduced to a character, they feel like an extra. They feel unimportant. They have a brief scene where they have to do 1 to 2 lines convincingly. When Tarantino introduces a character, they're a legitimate person. And that's where he loses a little bit of pacing, because when you have... He spends more time in pretty much all the dialogue that are in all of his scenes. And that slows his films down, but it also makes pretty much every encounter with a character by a main character, it makes those secondary characters feel like real people. And I think the main thing that makes you feel uncomfortable about it is that so many other movies breeze through characters like that. But I think his method of making everyone, like, he shows you everyone's motives, everyone's principles, and it makes you feel for the character. And if we don't know the guy, if we don't know, like, the farmstead owner, like, we don't know that he's compassionate to these Jews that he's hiding, then it's, when the Jews are executed, we only feel bad for the Jews because of what happens to them. Whereas when that scene when he points to where they're hiding under the floor and his arm is shaking because he's like so upset and like disturbed by it, it just makes that scene so much more powerful because we know how hard he tried to hide these Jews, and we know how he tried to, kind of push the Germans away, but ultimately it's not worth him losing his life for these people to him.
But at the same point, I feel like a character could display those emotions in such a way that you would still be emotionally invested in it the same as you were. But at the same point, what pisses off somebody when they're watching a movie more? They're getting invested in the character, finding someone you really like, and then you find out they're only in like 2 minutes of the movie.
Well, I mean, I think it's a trade-off. And part of something that makes a good drama is losing characters that you don't like. Like, if you don't ever care about him in the first place, that scene loses a lot of power, but you don't miss that character. So it's kind of a trade-off.
Yeah,
so
it comes stuff like Schindler's List. There's plenty of characters that only show up for a scene or 2, but they do it in such a way that you can feel the emotions required of that scene. Yeah, but
Schindler's List gets you on a totally different type of emotion. You are on a more grand, like, you're thinking about it as more of a grand type of thing. Like, you're thinking about what's happening to this group of people by this other group of people. In Tarantino's films, it's conflict amongst individuals. There is a war going on, but these are individual people that we know well who are in the war. And that, to me, makes a better movie.
But that's the thing, it's the person that we're referring to is someone you never know well. They build it up like you're going to get to know him.
No, you get to know him in that scene. We learn quite a bit. We know more about him than any other extra in another film.
The only thing you know about him is that he speaks 3 languages, he has 3 daughters that are considered good-looking, and that he's possibly hiding the Jews.
Yeah, but we know how much he cares about the Jews. We know that he is somewhat selfless, but not enough to sacrifice himself. We know quite a bit about his moral code just based on that one scene. We know what he wants, how badly he feels when he loses the Jews. We know quite a lot more than I think you're giving it credit to. Your strongest argument is about pacing, which I agree with you. It does hurt the pace of the movie to have that, because there's several of those scenes, and that slows the movie down quite a bit.
Please consider subscribing. It's just as easy and quick as getting Granny a Virginia Slims off the counter.
So in love with you. And it's just so cringeworthy bad.